Nicole Kidman breaking her silence about her divorce from Keith Urban.
Fate is fate, and things come around when they come around.
The Oscar presenter tells Variety last year was rough. Quote, "I was quiet, I had other things going on."
For nearly 20 years, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban looked untouchable. A Hollywood love story so clean, so carefully framed, it stopped people from asking questions. But what does a perfect marriage look like when the cameras are off? And how much of what we see in public is actually real? Because perfection in public is never the full story. And now, as the separation unfolds, a different narrative is starting to surface. One that never made the red carpets, never reached the interviews, and was never meant to leave the room. According to Russell Crowe, who watched from the inside of the industry's quietest corners, what the world believed it was seeing might not have been the reality at all. And once that version of events begins to crack, it changes everything you thought you knew about the story. On a friendship before fame. In Hollywood, friendships are disposable. They form at premieres and dissolve by the after-party. Alliances are built on box office returns and broken the moment someone stops being useful. That is the world Nicole Kidman entered when she left Australia to chase a dream that most people would have called impossible. But she carried something with her from those early years, something Hollywood could never replicate or replace. She carried a friendship with Russell Crowe. Their bond was not born under the spotlight. It was forged in the late 1980s, in the raw, unglamorous world of Australian theatre and independent film. Two young actors hustling for their next role, sharing the same ambition and the same quiet understanding of what it costs to make it in an industry designed to chew people up. And they were not romantic. They were something rarer. They were loyal. And that loyalty would prove more durable than any marriage, any award, and any headline. Through the years that followed, Crowe became the one constant in Nicole's orbit. He was there during the Tom Cruise years. He was there when that marriage shattered in the most public and painful way imaginable. He never spoke to the press. He never offered commentary. He simply showed up. And in a world that rarely allows anyone a safe place, Russell Crowe was hers. That is why his perspective carries weight that no tabloid source ever could. He was not a distant acquaintance piecing together gossip from magazine covers. He was a gatekeeper to her world. He knew the private Nicole, the one who laughed too loud when she was nervous, and the one who carried her grief quietly and never let the cameras see her fall apart. He had earned her trust in a way that very few people on this planet ever would. And he was standing in the room on the night that everything changed. Origin of a Love Story, January 2005. A glittering gala event at G'day LA.
Australian actors are making their mark in Hollywood, and G'day USA, once a marketing tool, has now become a must-attend function on the Tinseltown social calendar.
One of those elegant industry evenings designed to celebrate Australian culture in the heart of Hollywood. The room was full of famous faces, champagne glasses catching the light, conversations bouncing between accents and ambitions. And somewhere in that crowd, Nicole Kidman and a charismatic country singer named Keith Urban crossed paths for the first time. According to sources close to the trio, Russell Crowe watched the moment unfold from across the room. He saw the spark. He also saw the hesitation. Nicole, still carrying the scars of her first marriage, was cautious. Keith, a man whose charm was as natural as his talent, seemed interested but uncertain. And Crowe, by most accounts, played a quiet but pivotal role in those early days. He created opportunities for them to connect. He offered Nicole the reassurance of a trusted friend. He witnessed their story from its very first page. But the romance did not ignite immediately. After that first meeting, Keith went silent. 4 months passed without a phone call. Nicole would later laugh about it, admitting she believed he had not even noticed her. But when he finally found his courage, the connection caught fire with an intensity neither of them expected. A motorcycle ride through the countryside, a secluded picnic spot, and a moment that Nicole would later describe as the point of no return. She was, in her own words, a goner. By June 2006, barely a year and a half after their first encounter, they were married.
In June 2006, and barely 4 months into our marriage, my addictions that I'd done really nothing about blew our marriage to smithereens.
It was the kind of Hollywood fairy tale that makes people believe two superstars can actually make it work. Two of Australia's brightest stars united in a love story that looked effortless. But this is where the story deepens. Because just 4 months after their wedding, the fairy tale imploded. Keith Urban, who had long struggled with addiction, spiraled once more and checked himself into rehab. He would later admit with devastating honesty that he had caused the implosion of his fresh marriage. It was a crisis that would have destroyed almost any relationship before it had even begun. Nicole's response was extraordinary. She did not walk away. She did not issue a press release. She canceled everything. Our film promotions, career obligations, her entire professional world was put on hold to stand beside the man she had just married. But her support was not blind. She came to a profound understanding. She could not save him. He had to save himself. Her role was to love him and hold the space for him to do the work. It was an act of remarkable strength, patience, and unwavering faith. Against all odds, their marriage survived. Keith would later say that Nicole had given him the anchor he needed to shed the weight of his past. From his vantage point, Russell Crowe watched it all unfold, knowing this was no ordinary romance. It was a love story forged in fragility and tested by fire. A bond that seemed, to everyone watching, absolutely unbreakable. They welcomed 2 daughters. They built a life between Nashville and Sydney.
Nicole Kidman loves to treat her husband and daughters to a little pampering. The Undoing star revealed an InStyle's May beauty issue that she, Keith Urban,
And they became the couple that other couples pointed to and said, "That is what love looks like when it is real." And that is precisely what makes the truth of its ending so devastating. Because the stronger the foundation appears, the more shattering the collapse. And what was coming next would test everything Nicole Kidman believed about love, loyalty, and the man she had given 2 decades of her life to. Emotional distance grows after the trial of Keith's recovery. The marriage seemed invincible. They had faced the ultimate challenge and won. But as the years unfolded, a more insidious force began to creep into their lives, one that could not be conquered in a 30-day program. It was the slow, corrosive effect of distance. The engine of Keith Urban's career was the open road. His demanding touring schedule meant he spent roughly 200 days a year away from home. That is not just a number. It is a reality that carved their life in two. For more than half of every year, they existed in separate worlds, connected only by phone calls and the love letters that had become a ritual of their relationship. In a revealing moment during a pre-recorded interview, Keith himself acknowledged the harsh reality of that lifestyle. The loneliness, the sickness, the mornings on a tour bus at 3:30 when the weight of missing your family becomes almost unbearable. That kind of isolation, night after night, city after city, creates a void. And voids, as anyone who has lived through them knows, are dangerous. Sources close to the couple confirmed that the prolonged separations took a severe emotional toll. Reports suggest Nicole tried everything to bridge the gap. She made surprise visits. She rearranged her own career to be closer to his world. But no amount of devotion seemed able to close the distance that was growing between them. According to Crowe's reported observations, Keith began to pull away several years before the public had any idea there was trouble. The physical distance was breeding an emotional chasm. The intimacy that had once defined their relationship, and Nicole, a woman who had already given everything she had to save this marriage once before, was beginning to feel a loneliness that no phone call could fix. The cracks were forming, and no one on the outside could see them. That is the cruelest part of a marriage unraveling in the public eye. The world sees the red carpet smiles and the anniversary posts, and they see two beautiful people standing side by side and assume everything is fine. But behind the photographs, behind the carefully managed public image, a different reality was taking shape. One defined not by closeness, but by the growing silence between two people who once could not bear to be apart. Signs of breakdown. It was in this growing chasm that the first unsettling red flags allegedly began to appear. And from Russell Crowe's vantage point, these were not the ordinary strains of a marriage under pressure. They were, according to his reported perspective, behavioral shifts that pointed to something deeper. The phone became the first visible symptom. Keith reportedly became intensely protective of his device, turning it face down on every surface, then and becoming sharply defensive when Nicole would ask a simple question about who he was texting. For a couple married for nearly 2 decades, this sudden digital secrecy was, by all accounts, a chilling development. That defensiveness bled into their daily conversations. Reports suggest that when Nicole would ask normal questions about his day on tour, Keith's answers became vague and clipped. He seemed emotionally unavailable even when he was physically present, his mind somewhere else entirely, as if he were simply going through the motions of a marriage he was no longer fully invested in. But perhaps the most telling sign was one that played out in public. Around this same period, Keith's public declarations of love became more frequent, more emotional, more grandiose. At the AFI ceremony in April 2024, he delivered a tearful tribute to Nicole that moved the room. He spoke about her loyalty, her strength, how she had chosen love when his addiction had nearly destroyed everything.
Simply because Nick had such a truly otherworldly aura about her, and I felt a bit like I was meeting a real-life princess. I know a lot of you can relate to that.
The world saw a devoted husband paying tribute to the woman who saved him. But according to Crowe's reported interpretation, this was something else entirely. Some close observers believe it was a pattern of overcompensation. The louder the public praise, the more it served to mask private contradictions. It is a dynamic that relationship experts have long identified: performative devotion as a cover for personal guilt. And Crowe, watching from the inside, reportedly saw the painful disconnect between the man on the stage and the man behind closed doors. Meanwhile, Nicole's own behavior began to shift in ways that only those closest to her would notice. She reportedly started monitoring social media accounts connected to Keith's tour. She began making surprise appearances at his concerts, moves that looked supportive to the public but were, according to sources, fact-finding missions driven by a growing unease she could no longer ignore. The emotional toll began to surface in her work. Those on set with her noted moments of unexpected vulnerability, particularly during scenes that dealt with betrayal or abandonment. The line between her character's pain and her own was blurring. And then there was the moment that, according to Crowe, confirmed the public smiles were a facade. He reportedly witnessed Nicole backstage after one of Keith's shows, in tears. A raw, unguarded display of a heart that was breaking. She was not performing grief for anyone. She was living it. In that moment, So she reportedly confided not just a vague feeling of loneliness, but specific concerns that had been building for months. A fan photo that seemed too intimate. A story from someone on Keith's crew that contradicted the version Keith had told her. Each incident was a small crack in the foundation of trust. And together, they formed a pattern she could no longer ignore. A confrontation was not just likely. It was inevitable. The breaking point night. The breaking point did not arrive with a thunderous crash. It arrived in the silent blue glow of a phone screen, late at night. For years, Nicole had lived with a quiet, persistent intuition. A feeling she had tried to dismiss as the natural anxiety of a wife whose husband spent half his life on the road. But intuition, when ignored, does not disappear. It waits. According to Crowe's reported account, Nicole discovered a series of concerning messages on Keith's phone. The exchanges were allegedly with a female member of his touring band. As Nicole reportedly read through the conversations, a cold reality set in. The messages suggested private meetings arranged during times Keith had claimed to be working late. It was, if the reports are accurate, a calculated deception. What followed, according to sources, was not a screaming match. It was a 4-hour conversation that stretched until dawn. A methodical, heartbreaking presentation of truth. Nicole reportedly laid out everything she had gathered. Not just the messages, but the discrepancies in his travel stories, the unexplained inconsistencies that now formed a pattern too clear to deny. Piece by painful piece. By morning, she had reportedly issued what friends describe as her final warning. The terms were non-negotiable: complete transparency, a significantly reduced touring schedule, an immediate commitment to therapy. This was his one chance to save everything. For a few fragile months, it appeared the promise might hold. The couple was seen together, and there were even reports of a private vow renewal that suggested a renewed commitment. To the outside world, the crisis had been averted. The fairy tale was back on track, but according to Crowe's reported revelations, the reconciliation proved to be temporary. By the summer, Keith had allegedly returned to the same concerning patterns. The promises made in the desperate hours of that morning were broken, and this, more than any single act, was the final, unforgivable betrayal. It was not just the initial breach of trust, it was the disrespect of the last chance. The realization that the man Nicole had saved, the man for whom she had sacrificed so much, was either unwilling or unable to keep his word. Nicole moved forward with quiet, surgical determination. There was no long, drawn-out separation. No public statements about trying to work things out.
Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's split is getting messy. After 19 years of marriage, Kidman filed for divorce yesterday.
The divorce settlement papers were reportedly signed swiftly. The court documents, filed in Davidson County, Tennessee, cited the standard language of irreconcilable differences. But the details beneath that sterile phrase painted a far more revealing picture. The custody arrangement was telling. Keith agreed to just 59 days a year with their daughters, 17% of the year. A father who had built his entire public identity around being a devoted family man accepted terms that most would have contested fiercely. His quiet acceptance, according to observers, suggested he knew he had no ground to stand on. Had he fought, the details that both parties had kept private could have been exposed in open court. The silence was the price of his privacy. His child support was prepaid in a single lump sum, severing all ongoing financial entanglement. No monthly contact, no lingering accountability. It was the legal equivalent of a clean break, executed with the precision of a situation where one party holds all the moral authority. Everything about the proceedings pointed in one direction. The betrayed spouse dictated the terms. The other accepted the consequences in silence. The speed of it all, if from broken promises to signed legal documents, was not the sign of a love that had slowly faded. It was the sign of a trust that had been catastrophically and irreparably destroyed. And yet, even now, nothing about this story feels fully settled. Because in Hollywood, endings are rarely clean. They're edited, framed, rewritten in real time until the version that survives is the one that spreads the fastest, not necessarily the one that's true. Two narratives now exist side by side, one of quiet endurance, another unseen fracture. And somewhere between them is the version no camera captured, no interview confirmed, and no headline was ever able to fully lock in place. Russell Crowe's silence-breaking intervention may have clarified one thing, but it opened several others. Because once you start questioning the story of a 20-year marriage lived in the spotlight, you don't just rethink the ending. You start re-examining every moment that came before it. And the question now isn't what really happened when it ended. It's how many other perfectly polished stories are still holding together in public, while quietly falling apart somewhere just out of frame.